I'm so excited. I've got Valerie Giangrande on the show. She is known as the Quantum Eye Doc, and you know how excited I am to have somebody who understands eye health and quantum health on the show. So excited. This was such a fun conversation for me. I know that most of you trust me and believe me when I tell you how important light is, but I also get lots of questions from people. Not surprisingly, I mean, we're all really concerned about our eyes and the sunlight and on our skin too. So we talk about the sensors on our skin, but we're mostly talking about the eyes and how important it is to safely get sun exposure. So if you've been wondering about that, she talks about glasses and some contact lenses and sunglasses and the whole thing. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed talking to Dr. Valerie. Valerie, welcome to the
Hi.
show. I'm so excited to talk to you. You can't even imagine how excited.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Really, thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
I mean, to have a quantum eye doc on the show, a quantum eye doc in the world, it's so exciting. Really, because Valerie, as an optometrist, I'm sure we are going to talk about this, but I recommend, like all of us practitioners in the quantum health space, we're always recommending to get out in the light. And so
Mhm,
many people are scared, Valerie. They're scared. So, what we're going to do is help them
mhm.
not be scared anymore from this talk.
Okay, good. Yes, it's an uphill battle for sure. Absolutely. I get, some pushback, of course, but it's so important. It's one of the most important things we can do, obviously.
It is. Well, it's not so obvious for people
Well,
necessarily.
in
Maybe
our world.
in our world and
Right.
people who've been listening, but I think this will also help people who are in our world that want their loved ones to listen. So this will be helpful, but I think it might be helpful to just start with your quantum story. Like, how did you,
Mhm.
as an optometrist, you are an eye doc and you were trained a certain way, and then
Right.
how in the world did you come to quantum health?
So I had to live in Manhattan in my training, and at that point, I was obviously not in any kind of light. I started getting some of my own little bit of health issues. I ended up with a thyroid issue, all these little things. Then I went and got married and had kids, and my son had an issue. When he was turned 4, he had some neurological issues, and we were really concerned. And of course, the pediatricians wanted to medicate him, and I didn't want to. So we kind of went down the rabbit hole of functional medicine, methylation, all that good stuff. Stop gluten, stop dairy, change your life, supplements, all of that, and it helped. I mean, we really he's long story short, he's fine now, thank goodness. But all of those things helped. So one thing led to another. But I was still having some of my own health issues, and I went to my own functional medicine doctor, and luckily he knew it. He knew his stuff. He said to me, how much sun do you get? And again, as an optometrist with the sunglasses and blocking everything. I'm pretty pale, so I used to always wear sunblock. And he just said, I really think you need to get out there in the sun. And I noticed that he was a follower of Dr. Jack Cruz. And then once you go down that, the information that he has to offer, and this was had to be about 7 years ago. And just from the moment you read this information, there's just a light switch that goes off. And I just started to make these changes, and I couldn't even believe what I've learned, and what the reality is, how important that light controls pretty much every aspect of our bodies, and it happens through our eyes. So I've started to talk to patients about it, and it became something that I just love to do. And then when I get people who are interested, it's just so much fun to talk about. And people who really resonate with this, they do well. Some people don't want to hear it, and it's a little tough. But my goal, I really want people to understand how important it is to get light through our eyes. I mean, it's fantastic.
It's important. Yeah, it's beyond
Hmm.
important. Like light shapes life, right? So
Hmm.
you go to medical school. I mean, you go to
So
optometry
optometry school, mhm.
optometry school. Sorry about that. And
Yeah, it's
I'm
similar.
I'm guessing you were taught cover the
Sunglasses, UV light. We're basically taught to fear ultraviolet light. And I think that's just a general consensus. Just in general, ultraviolet light, wear your sunglasses. People come in and they think it's a badge of honor. Like, I wear my sunglasses as if they're doing something great. They think they're doing something really good, and I don't blame them because that's the messages that we're taught. But absolutely, ultraviolet light
Right.
causes cataracts, it causes macular degeneration, and we have to block it. And it's a very strong message that we learn, which is
Mhm.
unfortunate because there's so much more to it.
And that yeah, we're gonna get into that, but did you believe that? I mean, were you one of
Yeah,
those
absolutely,
hook, line,
absolutely.
sinker yeah, yeah, it
Oh,
makes
I
sense,
absolutely
right?
believes it. I don't even know where my sunglasses are at this point, but I had quite a few pairs of sunglasses. Absolutely, sunblock, everything. Even
Yes.
with my kids, I have pictures of them when they were babies, and I look back and I just, with the swim shirts, they were covered from head to toe. They had the white sunblock on their face, their hats covered up completely, never got any sun. Oh gosh,
I know the things we thought it was g it
we
we thought
thought it
it
was
was the
okay.
right thing, and we thought
Hmm.
that was the loving thing, and I wasn't when I didn't put sunscreen on them, I felt guilty, or I
Right.
was kinda made to feel guilty, like, "Don't you put
Hmm.
sunscreen on your kids?" I'm like, "Oh, I think they're fine," because
Hmm.
we would build our solar callus. I didn't know the words. I didn't know
Right.
that phrase, solar callus, and when you I wanna get into why light's so important, and
Hmm.
then I do wanna circle back to solar callus because sometimes when you Google that, you'll hear it from a lot of optometrists that there's no such thing or dermatologists.
Hmm.
So we need to kinda talk about that.
Okay.
But let's talk at first about, like, why light is so important. What's going on in our the eyes, that we need to have this light? What's happening?
Hmm. So light is controlling every aspect of our body. Let me just start with that. We
Mhm.
have a clock, right? So we have every aspect of our body when we wake up in the morning, when we sleep, every process that we do when we're hungry, our hormones, it's all linked to what time our body thinks it is. And luckily, sunlight is how we communicate. It's how our body tells time. And it's just a beautiful thing because when that sun rises, we have receptors in our eye. We have these cells that are waiting for that signal of sunrise to stimulate that there's blue light in the sun when it rises, and it stimulates our eyes. And when our eyes say, oh, okay, we see some blue light from that sunrise, we know it's morning. And that chemical, that light signal turns into a chemical that goes to the clock in our brain and wakes us up, literally stimulates the clock in our brain, and then the entire body wakes up. And it's fantastic because it starts this whole cascade of all of these different things that happen. We start releasing cortisol, we wake up, the body gets hungry, and all of the different hormones that get started with that cortisol production in the correct order are, that's what's supposed to happen. And as the sun is rising, it's the beautiful thing about the sun is that it has so many different aspects. We have our blue light, we have our infrared light, red light, ultraviolet light. All of those things are constantly changing, and they all do something different for the cells in our body. So we need those signals to tell our body what time it is. And then as the sun is rising and we start getting into that ultraviolet light range, again, that's where people are really afraid. But about an hour after sunrise, we start getting UVA shows up. UVA rise. It's a mild form of ultraviolet light, and I like to tell people we'll get into that anyway. Ultraviolet light. We have receptors in our eyes for ultraviolet light. Like, why would we have these receptors if it wasn't so important? We need on our cornea, the very front surface of our eye, we have cells called neuropsin that are trying to collect that ultraviolet A light. And inside the eye, in the retina, we have amino acids that are collectors of ultraviolet A light. And when we see this light, we make hormones and neurotransmitters that get started through our eyes. I just think it's such a beautiful thing that we have tyrosine, in our eyes, and when we or phenylalanine, and when we get that ultraviolet A light, it turns into thyroid hormone and dopamine and phenylephrine, not phenylephrine, norepinephrine and noradrenaline and melanin, which is super important. And then we have, if we talk about melanin, it's so exciting. And then we have tryptophan that turns into serotonin, which we need. We need serotonin, and that ultimately will turn into melatonin when we're trying to sleep. So now we have all of these hormones and neurotransmitters that get started in the eyes. And if we're blocking that ultraviolet light, we're not making those hormones, we're not making those neurotransmitters. Our body has no idea what time it is. And then, of course, we have your ultraviolet B light, which we kind of know that that's how we can make our vitamin D. And there's so many other benefits to that as well. Ultraviolet light does so many things for our bodies. But if we're blocking that signal through our eyes, our body still has no idea what time it is, and we're not necessarily making that vitamin D safely. We're not going to do all of those safe sun exposure aspects if we're always blocking that sun through our eyes. And then we have sunset, which is again that time of night when there is no more ultraviolet. It's just a very soothing red light, and that's how we know it's time for sleeping. So the sun just gives us so much information constantly. It's just this clock that's constantly changing, and we need to be wired. We're wired for that through our eyes to the brain to the body.
I know. Woo! That's one of my favorite things about you, Valerie, is how succinct you are. And I want everybody to just hit pause right now and go to Instagram. They can't follow you by your name. They have to find Quantum Eye Doc. We'll link it because it's so succinct. And if people were just have to re-listen to what you just said 5 times, I want them to understand that that's normal. We usually have to listen to things a few times before we're like, you get it on a cellular level. You're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. This is so important. There's a symphony inside my body, and it's orchestrated by light, and it's coming through the sensors in my eye and on my skin, but mostly through my
Right.
eyes," right?
Hmm.
So,
Right.
I want people to know that they can take this in little bits and process it because it is I mean, people are very attached to their ways. They're very
Hmm.
attached to their sunglasses, I have found.
Right, right. So that's where it gets a little tricky. Now, I'm not making any statements that that we need that ultraviolet light is completely safe. Obviously, we have to do it safely. Ultra
Right,
UVA light, when it UVA rise, is a very nice, mild, very low level form of ultraviolet light. And again, we need that. And I'm not suggesting that we stare at the sun.
right,
Um, and as far as protecting our eyes from ultraviolet light, if we're skiing and there's reflections from the snow, then of course we want to protect ourselves.
right.
If we're on a boat and if we're things like that, of course I'm not saying we never want to protect ourselves from ultraviolet light, but we have to be really mindful if we're spending most of our days indoors, that when we are outside we want that light in our eyes. So we want to make sure that we are getting those signals. And again, just being outside, not looking directly at the sun, just being outside is enough for the eyes to collect that.
Right. So before we get into the structure of the eyes, and I really wanted to just reiterate like melanin and how all of this is happening.
Hmm.
I want to just talk a little bit more about safety for people and how we this might be where we talk about building a solar callus and doing this
Hmm.
safely, safe sun exposure. But I really want to drive home too that when we're inside all day on computers on screens in the indoor lighting. Like people say, "Oh, but I'm next to a window." Or, "Oh, I've got all the lights on." Or, "Oh, I've got those special LED lights." You're like, "Whoa. Okay, so let's just tell people first of all, like that's not what we're talking about. And then how to do
Right.
this safely. Like how much
Safely.
time do people need because what happens, you know what happens? We go on vacation. And when we're
Yes.
on vacation, we get too much sun and we haven't built our solar callus, and then people say,
Correct.
"Oh, it's a problem." Well, that is a problem.
It is a problem, correct. So we'll start with what happens when we're not exposed to sunlight in general and we're indoors. So, all of the lights that we're exposed to is just that blue light signal, but it's just a single spectrum of blue and nothing is balancing it. And the way light communicates time to the body is similar to, it's actually an inflammatory signal in a sense, where that blue light is creating a little bit of inflammation, and then the body knows what time it is. But what's nice about the sun is that there's always red light there. There's infrared. Everything's balancing it out. So there's inflammation. Red light's going to stop that inflammation, and it's just everything's already perfectly constructed in sunlight. But in any kind of artificial signals of light, and that includes LEDs, TVs, phones, just even being behind a window, because windows do not allow that full spectrum of light to come through. So I'm sitting by a window right now. It's not open, which is why I have these on, because right now what is happening, the window's letting through mostly blue light. It's blocking the infrared. It's blocking the UVB and most of UVA. So it did alter that spectrum. So it's not going to be as healthy or safe. So, so when we get that signal of blue, that color blue is not balanced. And it's the same color temperature of the sun at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So if we wake up in the morning and we turn on our lights, our brain says it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and we skip all of those normal signals that we are actually require. So just being indoors all day is just setting our time to just lunchtime all day long, which
Right.
is really dysregulating to everything in the body. So that's where there's a problem with that. So to build up a solar callus, we want to be, so it kind of depends on how much sun people with very light colored eyes, blue eyes. When I say don't wear sunglasses, people with very light eyes, they say there's no way I can handle the light.
Right.
So what I say is start with actual sunrise light. Sunrise light has there's no UV in that morning light. And even if you start with a few minutes, like if you're that sensitive, just go outside as early as you can. And I know sunrise is a little hard for some people to even think about because it can be very early. But that is the safest time you can go outside and you just want to build up. And if you can handle 2 minutes, you start with 2 minutes and then you start with 5 minutes and you want to build up on your skin as much as possible as well. You want your eyes and your skin to have that signal because the red light, there's a lot of red and infrared light in that morning sun. There's infrared all day. But having that first signal of light without the UV allows us to absorb more of that safety so that we can handle more ultraviolet light later in the day. Absorbing that near infrared light helps us stay safe. It's such a healing light for us that helps us build up more exposure to that ultraviolet light.
Right.
And then when we get to UVA rise, that's when we actually start making melanin. And melanin, we all know, is how we tan, but melanin is perhaps the most amazing molecule because not only does it allow us to absorb, every single frequency of light, but it does so many amazing things. It actually provides energy for the body. And I don't know if I want to get into all of that, but it's a
Right.
really amazing nutrient that we need that gets made in our skin if our eyes and our skin are exposed to that ultraviolet light. And the more melanin we have, the more we can handle sunlight later in the day, and it's much better. And then when we are exposed to the stronger signals of UV, we make more melanin. The other thing that happens is that when we are exposed to UVA, we also make uricanic acid, which
Mhm.
is the body's filter for ultraviolet light. So when we're exposed to sun and we start, slowly building up the earlier signals of ultraviolet light. And again, I hate to give a time frame because it does depend on everyone's sensitivity. But the best way to know to do it safely is that when you get your ultraviolet exposure, when ultraviolet light hits the skin, it releases nitric oxide in our skin, which actually dilates blood vessels. So all of those red blood cells will rush to the surface because that's what we need. We need to collect that light. And when we get to when we've had enough, the body releases histamine, and that's that red response in the skin. And it's not a sunburn, but it's kind of your clue to say, okay, I've had enough, and then you just stop. So that's a nice way to build up, and you'll find that as you get more of that ultraviolet exposure, well, red light in the morning first, and then the ultraviolet, you can handle more of it, and you just want to really look for that signal. And the uricanic acid is just another thing that gets released so that we are protected. So again, just build up slowly. As far as time frame, UVA, you want to get 20 minutes of UVA at a minimum. I think that's really great to build up to. It's such a great thing to do. As much skin as possible is a
Yeah.
really nice way to build up.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I wanna point out from my perspective, mental health, like that UVA light. So I'm big on sunrise and sunset, mostly sunrise to set the day,
Hmm.
right? But that's so important. The UVA is so important for our mental health. And we could go deep into melanin because I just think that's amazing what's happening. We're basically like plants using chlorophyll, but
Hmm.
we use the melanin to
It's
create,
amazing.
and it's just unbelievable how we're
It really is.
designed. But if we're
Hmm.
really tuning in, this is what you're saying, like, pay attention to the signals and the signs of your body, go slowly. There's no rush here.
Right.
There's no, there's no, we could say like at least 2 or 3 minutes, 10 minutes if you can, 20 minutes. The more health problems you have, I think, the longer you can be out in sunrise and be out for sunset and get a
Yeah.
lot of that
Hmm.
red, the
Hmm.
anti-inflammatory piece of it. But then if people can just do what they can do and you listen to your own body, like really tuning in and paying attention to your own body. This is
Correct.
what we're saying.
Right. I mean, you're right. As far as mood and hormones and all of that, I mean, serotonin and dopamine.
Yeah.
How could you get any better than that, right? To just make it with light. It's amazing.
And I
Really
think
is.
people just don't believe us sometimes. Like they kind of believe you, but they're not sure if this is really like light can really be the thing that's
Mhm,
balancing their hormones, that's really helping with their neurotransmitters. And it truly is. I mean, that's what we're saying is
mhm.
this is how you do it.
Right, right. Because if we're looking at everything from, that quantum level, even if we're thinking about food, everything gets broken down into electrons, and electrons are carriers of light. So the way we work in our body from that level of the mitochondria and how we get our energy and how we make our, everything is based on electrons and voltage and electricity, and light is what governs all of that.
Right.
And yeah, it's incredible.
It is incredible. And I just want to point out that I thought it was really fascinating that for years I talked about DHA and how
Mhm.
this important fat, it's an essential fatty acid, and it's really essential for brain development. We really want moms that are in utero, we want babies need this, they need this nutrient for brain development. And all along, I'm like, DHA is so important. It's protective in the body, all the things. And then I come to quantum health, and I learned that the majority of the DHA in the body is in the retina.
Yes, it's amazing.
Hello.
It really is amazing. And DHA, I mean, it's a fatty acid that doesn't get used for fuel. I mean, we hold on to every little piece that we can because it converts light into an electrical signal, and it makes up the cell membranes, and it's very highly concentrated in the retina. I mean, think about all we're doing is kind of processing light, and we can't do that without DHA. So all of this stuff, I mean, yes, we have to build a solar callus and we have to get outside, but if we don't have DHA, we're not turning the light into that electrical signal. And it's really important to get DHA. And I usually like to say to get it really from seafood. And I know some people get upset with that and they say, but I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, we only convert maybe 1 to 3% of vegetarian sources of ALA into DHA. It's very hard to convert it. And, it's fish have done that for us, but what about the mercury in our fish? Well, then you want to try to have fish that are lower on the food chain, like sardines and oysters, or things that may not be as high in mercury. But it's vital that we have as much DHA as we can, and we can recycle it, but not everybody recycles it very well. If we have a shortage, we're just not
Right.
we're with our electricity and our voltage is low, and that's a big problem, and that's where eye issues come in again. And because the eye controls everything else, then the whole body can be affected by low DHA.
Right.
Absolutely. Let me
Yeah.
see if I
And I know that people sometimes, I mean, I know when people are allergic to DHA, I mean, allergic to seafood, we just have to get as creative as we can and go slowly with people. Everyone's different, but it really is, that is the best source.
so there is some in grass-fed animal meat,
Mhm.
low sources of it, I guess. And you can get it, I guess, in supplements, but it gets very oxidized. It's not in the SN2 form. It's very hard to absorb. Years ago, a DHA was, even in my profession, we always used to talk about DHA, fish oil supplements. And I remember telling people, take your Nordic Naturals DHA, and it might be a good product, but I don't, I haven't done that in years now because I hesitate to tell people to take any supplements. I'd rather get it from food, but it is an issue if you're allergic to seafood. That is a bit of an issue. So I would say grass-fed beef or grass-fed meat has
Absolutely.
some of it.
And it's just another reason that I'm always talking about this for mental health, right? That
Right.
they're
Mental
really
health, for
important.
the brain.
So,
I mean, the brain has so much DHA, right? We need it everywhere.
well, and what's interesting about the eyes is that's the part of the brain that's on the outside. So
Correct.
it's the
Mhm.
window, it's like the window to the soul, but it's also the window to everything going in.
It
It's
is.
really quite amazing. So do you want to talk a little bit more about the structure of the eye? And I know we have melanopsin, but is there anything else that we should know? Not that we have to go deep into
So
science, but
what's interesting about the way melanopsin is situated is that we have our photoreceptors, which helps us, our camera photoreceptors, but melanopsin is beautiful because it's at the bottom of the retina. So it's designed to be stimulated by overhead light, just by sunlight, which is why when we have lights on at night, if we have an overhead light, it can stimulate those melanopsin receptors and shut down our melatonin and all of that, which is a whole, extremely important for mental health as well, getting good sleep and repairing the body. But the way the eyes, we have all of the different layers of the eye to slow down light in order for the retina to absorb it and bring it to the brain. So we just want to be really mindful of too much of that artificial blue light. Each layer of our eye can get damaged by all of that blue light because we have our tear film is the first, the first layer that's exposed to light. And then we have our cornea and our lens and our vitreous, and all those different layers are slowing down light and protecting and absorbing that light before it gets to the final layer of that retinal pigment epithelium, that's where the melanin is. And that melanin, that's where we have all of our energy. That's where we need to finally send that light to the brain. So that's, again, just really important. So the UVA receptors, again, are on the cornea. So we also want to be careful if we're wearing contacts that block UV light. People wear contacts a lot. People love their contacts, but if you're wearing contacts, most contacts, there are a few, with most contacts are blocking that UVA or UV light in general, so that we are not getting those signals. And even wearing glasses, plastic glasses, even if they're not sunglasses, they have this the quality of the plastic. Most plastic will block UV light in general. So if you're wearing glasses, you want to make sure you pull them down or take them off if you're outside. But contacts are a bit of an issue. You really can't really shouldn't be wearing them when you're getting your sun exposure, and that's a really tough pill to swallow.
It is, but it's really important because I get asked that question a lot. What
Mm-hmm.
about glasses? What do I do? And I'm just, I say too, like if you're at a stoplight or whatever, and you
Mm-hmm.
roll the window down and just take things off for, even if it's just a tiny bit, I,
Right.
some of the light could be coming in over the sides of the
Yeah.
glasses, right? But
Yeah,
contact,
the sides.
no.
Contacts, no. Contacts are really covered. And then there are some, I think the biggest issue I see with contacts are people who just overwear them and the eyes are really dried out. And that's not necessarily a quantum issue, but it's just we need our eyes to be healthy in general. But that blockage of UV light is a big problem, definitely. And again, there's I could name just maybe a tiny little handful of contacts that don't block ultraviolet light, and it's that list is dwindling. There were on an older list that I made, I already had to cut it down because they discontinued, one of the products already. So it's dwindling because the companies think it's a good thing. They're
Right.
blocking ultraviolet light, and that's their claim. That they're thinking that it's a safe thing.
And I'm guessing that that's what people are asking for. So when
Mm-hmm.
consumers start asking for for contacts that don't block the UV, they'll start making them. That's
Right,
my thinking. But
right,
you're
right,
not going to make something that doesn't make money. And
correct.
if people don't know, then that's what
Right.
happens. And with dry eye, is this related to like the light? I'm guessing what's happening with
Absolutely.
dry eye
Absolutely. So a couple of different things. So one, just having blue light in general
to
is going to
dehydrate.
disrupt it's going to dehydrate our bodies, but
Mhm.
it's also going to be, all the issues that happen from poor circadian rhythm, with diabetes links and all of that, all of those inflammatory issues and hormonal issues will automatically dry out our eyes because we have glands that are hormonal. A lot of hormones can affect the glands in the eyes. But blue light in general, it's absolutely dehydrating for the mitochondria because it lowers the production of our water, and we need the collagen. The cornea itself is a layer of collagen, and we need that collagen to be hydrated. And the only way to be hydrated is, again, to take care of our mitochondria. And how do we do that? We want to make sure we're not getting all of that artificial blue light. So that's a big problem. The other thing that happens, you can get dry eyes from even from allergies and a lot of histamine. People get a lot of histamine issues and a lot of allergies, which can contribute. And sometimes dehydration can make histamine issues worse. We have just that lack of ultraviolet light, the lack of red light, the lack of infrared. Infrared light is what helps our body make more water and be hydrated. And again, all of the things that we're doing with being indoors on a screen is dehydrating. So we're exposed to Wi-Fi signals, and Wi-Fi signals is actually going to dehydrate and damage our mitochondria so that we're not making water. Same thing with the blue light. And just being on a screen, most of us aren't blinking very much. We need to blink to just replenish our eyes. So little things like that can actually contribute. But blue light is one of the major
It is.
issues.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really is a really big problem, this blue light
Hmm.
when it's not in nature, when it's not
Correct.
outside.
When it's unbalanced,
When it's
right?
unbalanced, when the sun, yeah, from our sun balances it beautifully. But yeah, it
Hmm.
really does come down to the blue light. And I think a lot of it for me, I got, okay, get out for sunrise. I was hook, line, sinker, not a problem. I was out doing sun sessions. I was really mindful with my 20 minutes and being really careful with my skin and learning how to do all of that. I mean, I was one of those people back in the 80s. I was in baby oil outside. So I was like frying.
Right.
And then I was like, oh no, we're all gonna have skin cancer. We can't do this. And I went the
Hmm.
opposite, complete
Correct.
opposite. And now I'm working, I've been working my way back for the last few years.
Hmm.
I got all that. Valerie, I was not blocking the blue light at night. I wasn't like we started this conversation and my blue blockers were over there. Sometimes I'm a little lax sometimes, I have to say. Not I'm religious now about putting my blue blocking glasses on at night. The
Mhm.
orange after sunset.
Correct.
Religious.
Right.
If you
I
also
mean, yeah.
oh, sorry, but
No,
if
no, I was going to say that's the most important though, the night. Like during the day, obviously we want to block some, but I think the night, as long as you're blocking night, I feel like that's
okay,
the
good.
most important thing that we can do. I know my kids, I have teenagers now, and I don't, you have children as well?
19 and 21, so I
Oh,
have
okay.
little grown men, but yes.
Oh, okay. So my kids are 16 and 14, and
Yep,
they don't want to, they don't want to hear it anymore. They used to be so good. My son is actually okay, but my daughter, she'll put them on and I leave the room and I know she took them off. And when I try to, she just, she won't wear them. And it's really, it's unfortunate. I say, I can't believe, I mean, I beg her, I try to get her to wear it, but it's so hard when they're older and they're moody. Like they're just, you can see it. And said, of course you're moody. You're on the phone and you need to get off that phone. And it's just, it's tough. Their moods, I feel like my son knows to come out. He gets up for sunrise with me, and he's such a happy kid. And my daughter, not so much. And it
I
really
know.
plays a huge role in their mood. Absolutely.
I know, and you're right, Valerie. This is such a good point. So I was gonna say too, like with all the lights, if all the lights are on in the house
Mm-hmm.
after, they're still getting around. So I like
Yeah.
to turn all the lights off. I like to have, I got the light bulbs with no blue and
Yes.
lamps around the house,
Mm-hmm.
and you can sneak them in your children's. You don't have to get the red light bulbs. I do like those, but you can get the bulb that doesn't really look like it's different light.
Right.
It's but it actually takes the amber that takes out the
We
blue,
have to. Yeah, we put
right?
that in all the rooms. Right.
All the
Mm-hmm.
rooms, and so there are sneaky things you can do. But
Mm-hmm.
also, like, I just feel like we have to keep modeling and talking about these things, and at some point, these kids, they're gonna feel bad enough to say, "Wait, what is it that I need to do?" Because their circadian rhythms are so messed up. Their circadian timing is off, and that is what is creating all the problems for people.
Definitely, definitely. And they, unfortunately, all they know is electronics. Like we didn't have that when we growing up. And it's such a shame. It makes me really sad that this is what their life is all about. And I mean, I can't imagine what'll happen, in the future, how much earlier they're going to have all these issues and just all the, mental issues that are happening. It's just, it's horrible. It really is.
Right.
But yeah, I love having those bulbs. I do the same thing. I turn off all the overhead lights. We put on all the lamps at night and just try to do the best we can.
Yeah, and everybody's got blue blockers, and I'm always
Hmm.
harping, "Wear your blue blockers, wear your blue blockers, why aren't you?" And I know they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do when
Hmm.
go back to college or whatever it is, what everybody's doing, but my youngest son really knows because he felt so this is how I found quantum health is because of
Oh.
his health issues. So he knows how much better he feels when he is when he's working on his circadian rhythms, but he still will roll his eyes when I talk about things like allergies
Hmm.
and the relationship to vitamin D and histamine and our allergies and all of the things. But you do what you can do, right? That's all we
Right,
can do.
right, right.
Yeah. So what have we missed? What do we need to tell people about? Okay, they don't have to be married to their sunglasses.
Right.
We want to get out in the morning and in
Hmm.
the evening.
And
What
take
else?
breaks. If you're
Take
if you're
breaks.
in an office all day long, and if there's any way, just like people will take cigarette breaks, just go outside, even if it's just for a few minutes. Those few minutes keep resetting the body and resetting the body all throughout the day. So you don't need much. I mean, 30 seconds. If you just literally open the door, go outside, pull down your glasses, it really makes a huge difference. Go for a walk, get outside. Walking in nature is such a beautiful thing to do because we're getting the natural light. Whenever we move, we're generating electrons in our body. Grounding is actually really important as well because it actually helps us absorb more of those electrons. The name of the game is, we the sun is giving us the circadian benefit, but it's also helping us energize our body. We're getting more electrons. So again, we just want as much electrical power and as much voltage as we need. And by doing that and having everything run the way it's supposed to, I mean, we will be mentally in a better place mentally and just overall healthier. I mean, even we feel better when we're healthy. And what's more important than that? I mean, we have to just there's nothing more important than feeling good. It really, and sleeping. I mean, sleeping again, that melatonin gets shut down if we have any artificial light at night, even a small amount. That 12 o'clock signal is enough to say to just shut down. It's enough to stimulate those melanopsin cells at night, shut down our melatonin, and melatonin is really important. It cleans out our body overnight. And melatonin gets made during the day as well from infrared light, which is another benefit of being outside. That gets locally made throughout the day in our mitochondria, but melatonin to help us sleep is truly, it will completely get shut down by any light. And we all know what that feels like if we can't fall asleep, you can't stay asleep. A lot of people will say, oh, I sleep just fine. It's like, do you stay asleep? Oh, no, but I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Then obviously something's still not right. Like we have to get that light right to really, truly be healthy.
Got it. And I think it's important to just reiterate that melatonin is the darkness. It's triggered by darkness. So yes, it's made earlier, but it's triggered by
Mhm.
complete darkness.
Complete darkness, correct. Right. We need hours of darkness for that serotonin that we got from the sunshine that we if we didn't get that sunshine, we don't have enough serotonin to turn into melatonin. So again, we need to be in sync with nature,
That's right.
the light and dark, just how we're designed. It's just so simple though, right? It just makes so much sense. Like, of course, we need to be have sunshine during the day, darkness at night. It's not that hard to understand, but it's just an interesting response sometimes when people learn it and then understand how easy it is.
Yeah, I
Kind of
think some
like,
people are like, "Oh, that's it seems too simple." But we
right.
also get really attached to our nighttime routines, I think, and even though
Hmm.
people seem to really want to sleep and they know sleep is important, they don't like waking up sluggish and being tired and that wired but tired cycle that we're always talking about, or people are always asking me about, like, what do I do?
Hmm.
That's a circadian issue, people. We are diurnal beings. We are day dwellers. And so, but they're real attached to their TV and their screen time,
Yes.
all the things at night.
Hmm. Yeah, and even if you have the blue blockers on, but you're still on the phone, I mean, it's still stimulating the brain in a way that you should
Mhm.
probably not use the phone right before bed. Even if you have the red glasses on, it's still doing something to the brain. I mean, it's a nice way to just remember to not even be on the phone at night. Just have the bedrooms need to be dark. So we can wear the blue blockers, we can wear these at night, but what happens if we have a bedroom that has lights? As soon as we take them off, and if we're in a bedroom with street lamps that are coming in, all of that goes out the window because that can also shut down our melatonin since we do require darkness. That's another thing. We want to make sure that we're wearing a sleep mask or blackout shades. Just make sure the bedrooms are really dark and cool, and just be mindful of not having Wi-Fi, not having a cell phone next to your head. Shutting down electronics, because all of those things really do make have a big impact on our bodies
Yeah,
overnight.
on our mitochondrial health. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is healthy mitochondria drive health, and
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional mitochondria drive disease. And I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, my mitochondria must be fine because I'm functioning." And you're like, mm,
Right, right. I
they
think it
can
requires like 70% of our mitochondria to
70%.
be damaged before we have any symptoms. It's just, and so that's where I think, gosh, I wish I was healthier before I had kids. I wish I had known this because I feel like maybe that wouldn't have happened. Although that's what got me here in the first place. But
Right.
just the health before you have kids. I want everyone to know this when they're younger. Be as healthy as you can before you have kids. This way, especially as moms, we pass our mitochondria on to our children. So the state of our mitochondria, that's what our kids are getting, when we give birth. So it's important to be healthy as much as we can before we have kids
I know, and
as
then,
well.
slop up the mess afterwards is that's what we're doing, and it's fine. It's
Right.
all good, you get
Right,
here
of
however
course.
you
Yeah.
can get here, but you're
Hmm.
right, the earlier you can do this,
Hmm.
and if we really just made it so that young people I don't know how we're gonna get the young people on board.
I know. I told my daughter because she's embarrassed because sometimes she's on FaceTime, and I said, start a trend. Make it cool to wear your glasses. And I would love to. I always say I would love to talk to the school boards. I don't really have time for that, but I would love to get the schools on board. Right? Just make all the kids, give them they unfortunately have to be on Chromebooks and all these computers. Give them all blue blockers, or better yet, go back to pen and paper
Go back
instead.
to the old basics. I wonder
Right.
if that's what's gonna happen, Valerie. I wonder if at some point in that our kids, when they're having their own kids and they're
Mhm.
realizing like we all are, is everybody going to end up being homesteaders and like getting
Right.
back to pen and paper or pencil and paper and like all the
Right.
basics. But even if we could get teachers, like if
Mhm.
teachers had an earthing mat under them while they were teaching, if everybody could do light breaks, if we
Right.
just had blue blockers and, better lighting,
Mhm.
which I know is coming, all the things that
Right.
help.
Or even just a lot of times when I have teachers come in to get their eyes checked, I love having teachers because I say, just open your windows, just open your
Yeah.
windows in the classroom. Even if it's a little cold, just get cracking the window. It's amazing what a difference just cracking a window, that light comes in as opposed to a closed window. So that makes a big difference also. Even if the lighting is poor, at least you can get some of that full spectrum light. So I like to tell them about that. I don't
Yeah,
know if they're doing it.
I know, but
Hopefully.
little things can make a big difference.
Hmm.
And I think that's what people want to know. Is like, okay, well, what little things, because I'm not going to change everything in my life,
Hmm.
probably, but just start where you can start
Correct.
and make the little changes that you crack a window on the way to dropping to work or dropping the kids
Yeah,
off or whatever's happening. And I like to use summer just because I used summer when I figured out like my vitamin D was super low and all of the you start to learn all the things. And I'm really not a big fan of supplementation. So I
I agree.
don't recommend melatonin unless
Hmm.
there's some kind of dire need for it or vitamin
Hmm.
D because it's not the same as when it's made in the body, right?
Absolutely. I totally agree. Everyone's on vitamin D supplements and it's not sulfated, it's not activated. It has to go through your liver and your kidneys as opposed to just being made from cholesterol in our skin, and it has all those metabolites activated and usable, and it's what we're designed for. And yeah, in the winter it's lower, but in the winter that's when our melatonin should be nice and bountiful because it's dark mostly. So I think that the body's designed to perhaps have lower vitamin D in the winter and build it up in the summer and not have to supplement with it.
Right. And that's the point of summer. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is the point. Even, I live in Florida, so people are
Oh,
like
nice.
it's sunny and hot there all the
It's
time.
nice.
It's great that we've got UVB all year round, but we really can use the summer to prepare for winter. Like your
Mm-hmm.
mood, storing up your vitamin D, like this is how we're made so that we can
Absolutely.
use it. And I don't know if there's anything I'm missing in that, but that's the point, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know, I'm sure you know that you use the D Minder app. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
use that
I
app? I
started
love it.
with the D-Minder,
It's
and it's
yeah.
free, so everybody can
It's
find that.
free, yeah, and I will tell you, when it gives you the little indication of how much vitamin D you have, when I get my levels checked, it's pretty on point. Like, it's very close to my actual levels when I just to, if I get it checked to kind of see where I'm at. It is interesting. I think it's a really big help, especially because there's a lot of times where I probably would have sat out a little bit longer and perhaps burned if I didn't have that app. So it really does help you kind of get as much vitamin D as you can without burning. And again, you kind of play around with it and see how you feel. But I think that's a nice easy way to just get some good vitamin D right in that middle of the day, as long as you've already built up your solar callus and done everything safely.
Mm,
It's a great app to use. And circadian life app as well, I think, is very helpful to know
I do.
when the UVA is up and when the sun comes up, and just little reminders. Like, it tells me when I should stop eating for the day. That's how I set it up, and things like that. So
Yeah, it's both of my 2 favorite apps. I always recommend those, and if people are like, "Wait, how do I do it?" If you follow, either of us, but definitely me on Instagram, if you go to my link tree, it will
mhm.
take you to the apps, and so if people are
Oh,
confused
great.
because
That's great.
Circadian Lifestyle was the second app I got, you're right. Because the D-Minder, since it's free and it's D people that are listening and are like, "Wait, what
Mhm.
are they saying?" It's D and then Minder, D-Minder, and you can put your skin type in there, and it helps you with figuring out how long you can be out without burning. Great place to start. But then well, I had no idea when UVA was. Valerie, how funny is that now?
I didn't either. I didn't either until I did the quantum biology collective. I don't even think, all this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
again, Dr. Jack Cruz is such amazing information, but until I did that certification, I think that's when it really, really learned, even more, just in a nice way to understand that UVA is an hour after sunrise. How easy is
How
that?
easy is that? And I was like, I need an app. I don't know.
Right, right.
I do
Mm-hmm.
like the app, and the app has like research too if you're one of those people
Mm-hmm.
that likes to dig. So I do like that app. But I think that's a good point too to make for people that are listening that are health professionals, or
Mhm.
if there may be people that want a quantum health coach too, of like how important this is. Like I didn't follow Jack Cruz. So I'm not a Uncle Jack didn't bring me here, but
Okay.
most people find their way from Uncle Jack, right? But
Right,
however
right.
you get there, like you might have learned a lot of things, and if it's resonating, the Quantum Biology Collective is such an incredible place
It's
for us
amazing.
practitioners. Like
It is amazing. I really
unbelievable, right?
life changing,
Life
truly.
changing.
Just gosh, I absolutely love it. And just the community itself is just such a wonderful place to be, right? I love it. I thought it was wonderful.
It was, yeah, and
Mhm.
I've done all kinds of trainings. I'm sure you've done all kinds of trainings, and this was the most life-changing, of
Absolutely.
anything I've ever done. And if
Mhm.
people are like, "Yeah, but I'm not a practitioner." Health quantum health coaches, this is what we do. You are an eye doc, and you also are
Mhm.
using quantum health, but they can find health coaches that are trained in quantum, and
Right,
that's what
right.
I think,
Yeah,
people may want
amazing.
to figure that out.
Right. I mean, I'm sure once you I feel like everything is linked to quantum. Every time I hear someone say I'm on a medication for diabetes, I'm like, all right, they're blue light toxic. They need to get more sun. You think everything turns into everything because it does. It has to do with almost practically everything. So just start thinking in terms of electrons and light and all of
Mhm.
it.
Electrons are like money in the bank, people. It's the body of the bank. You wanna collect the electrons. Yeah, and I think if people are like, "Well, what do I say to my eye doc?" Like, what if you yeah, oh,
No,
that's a
that's
big
a tough one.
sigh.
Yeah, it is because I feel like I do better. I think patients are resonating much more than my colleagues. I sent my colleagues my presentation that I put on YouTube and for the Quantum Biology Collective, and I think maybe one person watched it, maybe two, and I don't know that there's been any changes made or any kind of acceptance of it. And no one said anything negative about it, but I don't think it's really made any real impact. So I think it's tough because we're talking and they're always talking about, how do we get people to wear their sunglasses more and so it's tough. I'm in an interesting spot. So I think working with people in general and telling them how to handle it has been working better than trying to reach colleagues at this point. But
Right. It's
hopefully at
true.
some point.
So
Yeah.
some people may just wanna just not tell their eye doc. Go to your eye doc to
I
get
feel
the
like if they go to their eye doc and they say, "Oh, there's this eye doctor telling me not to wear sunglasses," out of context, it does sound. And again, I want to be really careful. Ultraviolet light it has to be done safely, and I just want to say that over and over again that there's safe
yeah.
sun exposure, which we know. But out of context, I think it would be. I don't. I think they would just laugh at it. We're just not. Hopefully, at some point, this does become more well known, and that's my goal. That's one of the things I would love to start spreading the information about. But I think it's not there yet.
Yeah. Well, maybe there are people listening that are eye docs, or they're married to an eye doc or whatever, and we start spreading the information. I think that would be
Hmm.
really helpful because it's not that big of a leap to when you understand the structure of the eye and how important light is to the eye. I don't
Right.
think people are going to have to like stretch themselves to understand this.
Hmm.
So,
And the research is there. It's not. We're not just making this up. If you look at the research, there's you can't dispute it. It's just amazing that it's not being seen. How's nobody seeing this?
I know, I know. It really is quite interesting. Just
Hmm.
the mountain of research on circadian rhythms and
Hmm.
but it's the same in my field, the mental health field, but people in my field are open to hearing things. It's a little different, but we're not taught any of this. So it's
Right.
all new for people. And
Hmm.
I just think we're the pioneers, right? We're the people
Correct.
bringing it to the people. And I'm so
Correct.
grateful that you're here.
Thank you. I will say in the industry though, red
Yeah,
light therapy is actually becoming a treatment
quite a
for a
thing.
lot of different things in the eyes. So there is some movement there. So I shouldn't say that there's nothing that it's completely you know a low level. Laser therapy is being used in red light therapy for dry eyes for a lot of different things are being used. So that's promising.
Well, I since you brought it up,
Mhm.
Is there anything else we should say about red light therapy? Because I started using the red light panel that I bought for my son to help
Mhm.
my eyes. That's exact and I couldn't believe, Valerie, how much it was helping improve my energy. In the
Yeah.
mornings, I would wake up really energized and grounded, and I was like, "It's gotta be that red light."
Oh, it's fantastic. So the only thing I will say there are so we have to be a little careful about red light in the eyes. I will usually keep my eyes closed in front of the red light panel as long as it's not because sometimes that brightness can be a little much for some people.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to get too close. You don't want to do it for too long because you don't want your eyes to get too hot, I guess, from the infrared. But all of that, I mean, the studies of red light, it's fantastic on the eyes, but it's hard to give a time frame of what would be useful. So you want to be a little careful with that. There are some studies saying that too much infrared light can be a problem. And infrared light does penetrate very deeply. But yeah, I have a red light device as well. And I'll just stand a little further away. And sometimes I just keep my eyes closed and it's penetrating. I mean, it's definitely goes pretty deep. But I would just start with just a few minutes here and there. And I
Okay.
think that's probably the safest thing to say. And then, of course, you do whatever feels right. But I hesitate to say kind of go in front of that red light panel and go too close to it because we don't know if it's too bright for some people.
Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I think most of the studies that I saw were so varied, like
Right.
from how many minutes to how slow,
Exactly.
and I was like, "Okay, I'm
How
just gonna
close,
have
the
to."
wavelength, the power, right? So it's
Yeah.
hard to get, and I'm trying to come up with a more of a structured. I can't wrap my head around it either. I'm trying to get it all together and try to say, okay, this is what would be safe, but I don't have that yet because
Yeah.
it is so varied, and I'm a little hesitant to kind of say this is how many minutes you should do it because again it can be too much for people. It can be too much, although I think it is extremely helpful. I mean, there's a lot of studies on red light myopia, things like that, so
Yeah,
hopefully.
it's very promising at a minimum.
Yes.
So and the important part is that you can go outside for infrared.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
available outside
Mhm.
all year round. You don't have
All
to.
year round, all
Yeah.
day long. Yeah, I
Mhm.
just love it.
I love it too. Well,
Mhm.
Valerie, I just wondered one little last thing. What nourishes your body, mind, soul since you're giving so much to other people?
Gosh, I will say, being in a forest, like just walking, getting outside, to me is my favorite. It's a toss up between being at the ocean or being in the forest. Those are the two things that I would say if I had to pick a perfect day, it would be going for a walk through the woods and then being at the ocean. And that to me calms me down more than anything.
I
Anything.
love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Two of my favorite. I really love a
Hmm.
forest too. I
It's
love
just
trees and
the
just being.
smell of it, everything is just, oh gosh, it's so fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This is so
Thank you.
helpful. I'm so grateful that you're educating people and that you're in our quantum corner.
Thank you so much.